lineup. But Thijs and Pavel, just two of the most renowned players on the scene. Pavel, as you rightly said, and have been saying all night long, he is the world champion. Everyone owes him that respect. This isn't the first game, is it?
I believe this is the first game.
Oh, it is the first game.
Yeah, Rogue versus Warlock. You see it on your screen. That's the first game that's supposed to be queued up. It's the first game that's happening. These guys are not messing around, straight into it. And as suspected, the Dragon Priest versus the Reno Mage has been banned out. So that Dragon Priest might be a point of contention for Thijs. It has that one matchup against Pavel's Shaman, which is definitely very winnable for the Priest. But Pavel will probably feel comfortable in that matchup as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Thijs banned the Reno Mage versus the Shaman. That's again what you'd expect. We've been talking about that matchup, and we know that Thijs runs the more aggressive Shaman, not the slower Jade Shaman, so it makes a lot of sense. And Priest versus Warlock. You said as well earlier that Reno Lock kind of stomps on Dragon Priest, so it just makes sense for Thijs to get rid of that one also. But now, one of the more interesting matchups in the game, this one. Doomsayer not actually going to do much at all for Pavel here, as Thijs just has a 5-1 on the board.
He does, and yeah, this is one of the really strong early plays that you can make against Reno Lock. There's two schools of thought as to how to play this matchup. Some people like to go really, really aggressive with it. I know 6-0, for example, is an advocate of that kind of play, where you just push for damage all the way, try and overwhelm them very quickly. The other style is, of course, to just play it more like you would against, say, Reno Mage, where you get greedy with your Auctioneers and you try and fill up your hand and draw your threats. The problem with that is that sometimes Reno Warlock has the ability to be a bit more proactive. If they get a big minion down on turn 4, for example, they can start putting pressure on you. So yeah, Thijs, obviously a fan of the aggressive stance, going with that early Cold Blood, and it only gets answered favorably for Thijs in the form of a Mortal Coil, which he already did not see come out. So, reasonable pickup for him to just force the 5 damage through with the patches. And I think he also had that Void Terror in mind that he picked up, where if the board did stick, he could potentially make a massive threat on turn 3 with the Void Terror. But Pavel generating some board here has kind of put a stop to that plan.
It's interesting. Thijs is able to push another 5 damage here with that patches. So it's worked so far. That's 10 damage that's been developed by this. The Void Terror must have been so tempting, but I agree with you. Pavel's board's probably just that little bit too big. The Void Terror would only have 5 health, so it would have been down very, very easily. Especially when you look at the Shadow Bolt we can see in Pavel's hand. I like Thijs's play there, just fishing for more cards with the Fan of Knives and dealing that last little bit of damage that he could with patches. But now Pavel puts down the Doomsayer, and he's going to push the tempo so that next turn he can start putting minions on the board, and Thijs has to play catch up. It also blocks Tomb Pillager, obviously, on turn 4. That's probably Pavel's main intention here.
Yeah, good decision from Thijs on the previous turn. You saw him think long and hard about whether to push that extra 1 damage to face, and in the end it did turn out to be 3 damage because Pavel made the trade right back the way that Thijs would have made anyway. And I was just about to bring up the idea of whether Thijs would just drop his Blood Mage into this, because he's run out of steam quite quickly here. He wants to pick up Pillager, Drake, Auctioneer, all those kind of cards so he can start going again. But Pavel now is going to take command of the situation just a little bit. The Kazakus 3/3 body itself does not really pose a threat or pose any kind of significant board control, but the fact that he's bought himself enough time to get that potion in his hand is of course going to be a really big deal.
I don't recall what the first pick was there, but that didn't look like the strongest potion either. I don't think he even got given the option to deal 4 to all minions, so it's not going to be dealing with any concealed boards anytime soon.
But still not hugely important right now, as
Thijs
is still suffering for proactive plays. He does now have the option to develop Buccaneer on board, which is of course just a Flame Imp, a 3/2 that can come down and contest, but that 1 mana small time in his hand is actually beneficial to have alongside the Edwin as well, and he doesn't need to push much extra damage through here. It's only really 1 kind of mid-sized minion connecting to face, and then he has Leroy, Coldblood, and Eviscerate all built up over the coming 2 turns as well to be able to finish the job. That aggressive start with the Coldblood push on patches, getting him for 10 damage in total, I think. Well, 11, I think. So I think he attacked once before.
Yeah, you're right, 11. Yeah.
So that has really set him up nicely for this game.
Yeah, I mean 11 damage from 2 1-mana minions, one of which was summoned for free from your deck, so you didn't even have to draw it. Um, that's pretty good, right? You can't really complain about that if you're Thijs. It is a bit of a shame that his hand has no steam now. Conceal isn't quite good at the moment, but it's ready to soon be quite good if he can pick up a Questing Adventurer or a Gadgetzan Auctioneer next turn.
Not bad. I mean, what's wrong with small time? Put your Cold Blood on the small time, Edwin, and Conceal.
Yeah, that actually seems really, really strong. The only problem with that play are the board clears that Reno Lock often runs so many of. Let me just familiarize myself with Pavel's list. But yeah, there's Demon Wrath, there's Hellfire. We can see the Shadow Flame in hand. And also, obviously, Twisting Nether we can see. So he isn't short on board clears, and Thijs needs to bear that in mind.
He's not, but he'll be out of range with his Edwin, at least, of a Shadow Flame coming down with the targets that he can at least see. So it'd be a power overwhelming Shadow Flame to be a full clear. He would, of course, lose the value of his second Cold Blood to that Shadow Flame, which is kind of a big deal if he puts it on the Buccaneer. So I can definitely understand the restraint here from Thijs, but Thijs kind of has a hand right now that, to me, says take some risks, right? Like you need to go, you need to push. Much less all-in play. Still gets a big minion on board with the 6/6, and potentially sets up lethal because he just has Leroy Coldblood on the following turn. So if the 6/6 connects, then that's good enough.
And also, you have the potential to conceal the Leroy Jenkins. Maybe if Thijs sees a board clear get used up on this board, he might think it's a little bit safer to play Leroy Coldblood, hit the face, and then conceal it, and hope that it survives into the next turn.
Alcony, you led us astray. There was, in fact, a 4 damage to all potion.
I missed it.
Yeah. Deal 4, draw 2. Pretty solid in the rogue matchup, for sure.
And that's 4 board clears in
Revive
Pavel's
2
hand.
can arguably be a little bit better in that situation, but Pavel actually doesn't have key cards like Reno in his hand right now, so the draw 2 is actually pretty strong in that spot.
Demon Wrath, Hellfire, Shadow Flame, and Twisting Nether. Pavel, take your pick. How do you want to deal with Thijs's upcoming boards? The only thing Pavel really needs to be afraid of now is his health just dropping down to 0 very, very soon. So he can't really afford to tap anymore. Leroy is a threat, but it's not enough yet. Thijs needs to somehow pick up a little bit more damage. And given that he's already used a Cold Blood, he's already used Eviscerate, he's running out of quick ways to kill off Pavel.
Yeah, he's actually a really awkward 1 damage off Leroy Coldblood Conceal actually being quite appealing, because he would go in for 10 and then attack for 1, which would leave Pavel at 5, which means he can Hellfire and only be at 2 health. Whereas if he was 1 damage lower, then you could actually kind of take Hellfire off the board, because Hellfire would leave him at 1, and that would mean that Thijs could then just swing in with the dagger to finish the job. So I think if Pavel was just 1 health lower that turn, we may have seen Thijs go for the Leroy Conceal line. But since there was kind of multiple good AoE options, Demon Wrath and Hellfire both available, and as we can see, both specifically available to Pavel right now.
All of them. I think it's all of the board clears in his deck actually right now. As there's no Abyssal Enforcer, unless I've missed that. No, there's no Abyssal Enforcer. So
wow, really?
This is all of the board clears.
Fascinating. Has indeed omitted Abyssal Enforcer from his deck. Wow, surprises me.
Yeah, I had to check twice for that as well. I guess it's just a case of not being able to fit it in along with the Leroy combo.
Yeah. Choosing to go with Mountain Giant, which is a card that a lot of people are leaving out, and it kind of goes to speak to different strategies coming into this. We saw, for example, Eloise bringing a very anti-aggro based control lineup. She was expecting a lot of aggro to come out, and then decks like Control Warrior would be very powerful. If you're bringing Mountain Giant in your Warlock, then that generally speaks to the fact that you're expecting to be able to ban out enough of the aggro that Mountain Giant becomes a good card. Because Mountain Giant not particularly powerful in the aggro matchups whatsoever, and it's a reason why we've been seeing, for example, Sifka's list that was very successful, and Hoy's list straight afterwards that haven't been running the Mountain Giant.
Interestingly, though, Pavel is going to have to play against Thijs' aggro shaman with the deck, so it hasn't been banned out. We're going to have to see how that pans out a little bit later. In the meantime, Pavel's now picked up Reno Jackson. And again, I feel as though this is one of those positions where if Pavel could go, yeah, this is my hand, Thijs might go, yeah, I don't have the damage to deal with that.
Well, if that card there, which is a 0 mana card called Preparation, was instead a 6 mana card called Gadgetzan Auctioneer, that would probably be enough to still keep him interested, even if he knew the Reno was there. But
right.
This is what is referred to in the business as a rogue hand. It's something that you need to invent something special to win a game with this hand, and it's this kind of scenario which really separates the even very good rogue players from the truly fantastic rogue players. That the incredible ones will find ways to win even in this kind of situation sometimes. Not
yeah, I was
often.
Gonna say, do you think that means if Thijs
often.
loses this?
But sometimes. And yeah, Thijs, I think this is correct recognition. I think he's realized that was kind of the last turn he could hold on and wait for an auctioneer or a questing or some kind of alternate plan. And now he just needs to go. But, you know what looks like a good turn this turn?
Does it involve Reno?
It does involve Reno, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
It's a shame that the Demon Wrath is already used up, because Demon Wrath into Reno would have been completely backbreaking right there.
Yeah, that would have been an instant concede from Thijs, but at least the Leroy Jenkins lives here, so Thijs can put Pavel back down to 20 again. If he picks up a Gadgetzan Auctioneer now, then there were plays to be made, but that's a Tomb Pillager.
Yeah.
Decent minion, but not quite the one we're looking for.
Shake of the head from Thijs really says it all in that situation. He's not happy with how this game's played out. This is the risk. When I talked about the two ways you can play the matchup at the start, I talked about the risk of the second method, which is sometimes Warlock can just rush you down with a big minion on turn 4 and not giving you as much time as you need. Maybe they get an early combo that just ends the game much quicker than you were expecting. The risk of the aggressive line that Thijs took is that you open yourself up much more to these kind of just fizzling out draws where you don't quite get there. So,
and it doesn't help that Miracle Rogue often does do that thing where it just defeats itself by never giving you the Gadgetzan Auctioneer. Yeah. In a game where you've gone all in, you're holding on to these 0 mana spells, the feeling of never drawing Gadgetzan Auctioneer just feels that little bit worse.
Yeah.
And there you go. Pavel takes game number 1 with his Reno lock.
Yeah, people say it's around 1 in 7 for you to not draw an Auctioneer over like an average length game. I'm never quite sure, like no one's ever shown me they're working on that. It's kind of a hard thing to calculate, like exactly like how many turns are you dealing with and so on and so forth. But I guess I trust the prevailing wisdom on that, having never done the maths myself.
It's just average.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Just take it.
Yeah, sure. But yeah, so it's somewhere around 1 in 7 games that you don't hit an Auctioneer, and those games can be very, very difficult to win. The Small Time Buccaneer package has covered some of the cracks in Rogue, because you can win games just by curving out aggressively. Small Time Buccaneer, forwards to Tomb Pillager kind of thing and go from there, but Thijs didn't really even have good follow-ups to his opening aggression.
No, it seemed like a strong start, but Pavel was able to deal with it, and now we're gonna see the Priest versus the Jade Shaman, Mid Jade Shaman. That's what we're calling it, right? Mid Jade Shaman.
Sure, yes.
Or just mid range Shaman. I don't know.
Yeah, it's almost to the point where you can just call it mid range Shaman at this point, because no one really plays Shaman without the Jades anymore.
Right.
The Jade cards are just too strong. But Pavel is going to be relatively comfortable in this matchup because he got a weapon in his opening hand, and I was saying how 1-drop into weapon wins this matchup for the warrior. It's 1-drop into weapon, 1-drop into flame tongue can both do it for Shaman, which is why Shaman is perhaps even stronger in this matchup than warrior is, that most people will argue Priest has a really strong chance against. But Pavel doesn't really have the aggression that a lot of other decks have. He can really afford to go later in the game with the additional value that he has, but he will not want to lose the board early to Dragon Priest. Like, Dragon Priest curving and hitting Cabal Talon Priest on 3, that's where you get into a mess. So the weapon he will try and use to prevent that from happening. And this is a very heads-up attack from him because it creates a number of awkward scenarios.
I guess a problem Pavel is facing here is that he didn't get the 1-drop part of the 1-drop into weapon. And now Thijs putting down the 2/4 taunt does prevent Pavel from clearing anything up at all, and picking up a second Jade Claws isn't really that helpful right now. Though you were saying in the previous series, this deck does often whiff on turn 2. Like you kind of get used to that. So maybe playing a second Jade Claws and getting a 2/2 minion was just fine for Pavel here. It's just the fact that Priest can heal up is going to be awkward. And there's the Cabal Talon Priest that you said would ruin Pavel's day. It looks like that's exactly what's happening.
Yep, he is going to have a bad time for the foreseeable future. Jade Lightning would be a pickup here if he wasn't overloaded, but of course he is. So Thijs full in that knowledge, happy leaving these 3 and 4 health minions on the board to contest. But Deckhand will have to do a job here, which it does. Allows him to trade out the majority of the board, just leaving that 3/4 that came down on the previous turn. And now the decision of whether he wants a totem or whether he wants a blood mage. Of course, this deck does feature the thing from below, but the interesting quirk of Pavel's list is that he's only playing 1 and has omitted the other for the Bram Bronzebeard that we saw in his previous series. So pressing the totem button not quite as valuable for his list as it would be for life coaches.
Sure. Pavel's starting to seem to be in a good position here. Like he dealt with he dealt with Thijs' early board. Yeah, the Talon Priest lives, but it is only a 3/4, and now Pavel can start actually putting the Jades down. He's got Aya coming up in 2 turns, so Jade Spirit, we're on a 3/3 here. That's not that bad. And then next turn, Aya is and a Jade, and then another Jade. It's spiraling very, very quickly.
That is very interesting to me. Going Jade Spirit instead of the Jade Lightning. So what's the reasoning behind this? Because both of the minions he's played here get immediately chewed up with value trades, whereas he could have used the Jade Lightning to at least deny one of those value trades, essentially making the trade happen preemptively by removing it from the board. He seems to be committed to playing Aya the following turn, so it seems unlikely Jade Lightning will get played then. I guess it's just a matter of the better card being in your hand at that point.
Yeah.
Because the scenario is kind of the same both ways. So he'd rather have a flexible card like Jade Lightning in his hand than kind of a stiffer card like Jade Spirit.
You're right. I think yeah, that is the best explanation for that one. I was wondering the same thing, but you're right. It's Pavel's board would have just been dealt with just as easily, and there wouldn't be a Jade Lightning to play later on. Now,
the Thijs Azure Drake train is just resuming again. It looks like we saw him play 4 Azure Drakes in a single game previously, and it's looking like that might just be the pick here. Portal is, of course, an amazing card because he already has a Drake in his hand, which makes Maelstrom Portal insane.
Okay,
and
sure.
That's enough to convince him. Fair enough.
An additional 2 damage board clear seems good. Jinyu was out of the question. It's Pavel that needs the healing right now, not Thijs. And actually, that's an extra thing that Pavel has to be considering here. Thijs looks like he's going to make the value trade here, trying to make life awkward for Pavel. But Pavel's close to being dead. He needs to work really, really hard to keep this board at bay. Jade Lightning's almost certainly going to come in handy here to deal with that Blackwing Corruptor. And then Flame Tongue maybe allows Aya to deal with the Operative, but that still leaves a 4/1 on the board.
Yeah, he could also just go Jade Chieftain. He could trade his Aya first to buff the size of the taunt by 1/1 as well.
Okay.
But that doesn't really achieve too much in terms of the extra 1 defense. 1 health doesn't really get anywhere. You could also go Jade Lightning and Mana Tide and just leave the Operative up instead of leaving the Twilight Drake up.
Yeah, okay.
1 additional power on board.
That seems better, yeah.
There's actually a number of ways to play this turn. Of course, Bran into Jade Lightning doesn't work. It does synergize with Jade Claws, but not Jade Lightning being a spell, not a battle cry.
Chieftain, Chieftain felt a little bit awkward just because if the minion gets hit by Shadow of Death, then I think Thijs would have been 1-off lethal.
True.
He actually did go with the Flame Tongue totem play. Looks like he's just removing as much damage as possible from the board. Understanding that if the Flame Tongue totem gets traded into, then at least that's damage that's not going into the face, as Pavel needs to shift and play so defensively here.
Yeah, this is kind of the unique quirk of Dragon Priest. Dragon Priest is actually quite an aggressive deck for large periods of the game. They can curve out with like really, really high quality stats and dominate the board and be aggressive. And then somewhere around, turn 7, turn 8, they just completely run out of the ability to deal damage. So you can actually stabilize, as low as like 4 health. If you're out of range of Blackwing Corruptor, then suddenly it's very difficult for a priest to kill you from hand.
Right.
So if Pavel can get a grip on the board here and keep the majority of these last 10 points of health that he has available to him, he'll still feel relatively comfortable as long as he can keep complete control.
No option for an Azure Drake this time for Thijs, but
No.
gonna go with Hex. Incredibly valuable, just as another way of dealing with a Jade Golem, because these things are getting bigger and bigger. And very soon, as we saw in an earlier game between Thijs and Life Coach, the attention is going to have to shift, and Thijs is going to have to start playing defensively. Though Maelstrom Portal is looking fantastic right now.
It is. That Jinyu water speaker though, or that Yinyu is a UC pickup, I guess we should say. It's stabilized the life total completely now, so now the game has to be resumed by being played on the board, and if that happens, then Pavel has a much higher chance, because his quality of card now, his quality of top deck, is incredibly strong, be that the Jade counter is now all the way up to 7/7.
Right. Yeah, Jade Chieftain is an option next turn. Thijs has to play Bookworm on this brand, I think. But if that wasn't dealt with, then Pavel would just go out of control now. Yeah, I really don't think there is another option other than to just play Bookworm.
Ice obviously deep in thought about something, talking to himself, thinking through the reasons, but I'm definitely with you. I don't see too much logic in letting that brand live. That seems like a surefire way for just one card to blow you out of the game the next turn.
Unless Thijs wants to just hope that there isn't another Jade card in Pavel's hand. Knowing that a Jade Spirit's already gone, a Jade Claws, both Jade Clauses are gone, maybe he thought the chances were low, but no, he's gone with the safe option now, and Jade Chieftain will come down and just summon one 7/7 rather than a 7/7 and 8/8 with Taunt.
Is that the officially recognized plural of claws, by the way? Clauses? Is that what you just said?
Claws, I don't know. They're just claws, aren't they?
Okay. It actually looks like he's going to give away the Divine Shield here to the 3/6, which can make it a potentially powerful trading tool, but it does have to run into that 7/7, at least in his mind. He's put out a couple of Shadower Death checks already, and hasn't seen it happen. So from his mind, he might think that the hard removal isn't within Thijs' range, but we can see there's that Hex that was picked up from the Draconid Operative that might just allow this Bookworm to pick up a little bit more value than Pavel was expecting it to.
Right. Divine Shield is just very, very interesting. You don't generally see Divine Shield that often at the moment, and especially not on a 3/6 dragon. Yeah, okay, now the Hex comes down. And suddenly it's really, really awkward.
It is very awkward indeed. And Thijs didn't go for like full value off the Divine Shield. He could have gone Hex and had a pretty low value Holy Nova to allow the 3/6 to trade into, for example, the 5/5, for example, using the Divine Shield. But then you're kind of exchanging low value off your Holy Nova for high value off this Divine Shield, which doesn't really make a lot of sense. So yeah, I like this decision. Just keep the irritating 3/6 hanging around on the board.
And now Holy Nova's okay, but I don't... Well, there is no way that Thijs can prevent that 8/8 from hitting him in the face next turn. And I think when Jade Chieftain comes down, Thijs is going to be feeling even worse. But for now, he wants to remove as much damage from the board as possible while creating the biggest board he possibly can. He's actually going to heal up Jade Chieftain to draw a card. That is a pretty desperate play.
So I think what this means is that he's not playing Holy Nova this turn, in which case that was the trade that was going to happen anyway, right? The 3/6 Divine Shield into the 5/1. So there's actually no harm in healing it, and he has no way of injuring his own Bookworm. The Divine Shield is actually of detriment to him in that sense. That he couldn't set up like an injure the Bookworm and then Holy Nova play to draw some cards. So healing the 5/3 actually makes sense because it doesn't really change the trade that's going to happen.
You're right, no harm in that heal whatsoever. Bran, I think Pavel would enjoy having Bran more than Thijs is enjoying having Bran right now. It looks like a pretty dead card. And now it's going to get difficult for Thijs. If it wasn't already... I guess if the Northshire Cleric lives, there could be a great Holy Nova coming up from Thijs, at least allowing him to draw some cards, even if not really dealing with anything.
The Cleric's very awkward as well, putting it at 6, because it forces either 2 attacks to go into it or the 8/8s to go into it, neither of which Pavel really wants to do, because sending 2 trades into it, which means that too much of Thijs' remaining board just kind of runs wild. And you just don't want to send an 8-8 into a 1-6. That's just not a trade that you ever want to make. So Thijs has actually done well creating significant board tension this turn.
The other thing is, because the 9-9 Jade Golem has Taunt, it wouldn't have even mattered, because there wouldn't have been a way Thijs can make some trades and then Healers goes up with Holy Nova. The 9-9 Taunt was in the way and would have just killed anything that Thijs tried to hit with it. But
you were saying?
Shadow Word Death would have actually solved that problem, so Pavel was correct to deal with the Northshire Cleric after all.
Oof. Oh, how results oriented of you, Falcon. I'm not pleased.
You would have preferred to see the damage go face?
No. I think the trade was correct, but the trade wasn't correct because Thijs drew Shadow Word Death. The trade was correct because the trade was correct.
Yeah. At the end of the day, Pavel wins the long game here because his Jades are just getting bigger and bigger. Yeah, I think Thijs still has another Shadow Word Death somewhere in his deck, but Pavel has more than one more Jade card, so he definitely wins the value game here.
Yeah, the Pavel wins the long game here as long as that sentence ends with the exact scenario we saw kind of the wrong way round in Thijs versus Life Coach, where as long as a Northshire Cleric doesn't start going wild, he wins the value game now. Weirdly, in the Thijs versus Life Coach series, it was Life Coach as the Shaman that had the Northshire Cleric going wild. But yeah, Pavel is not giving any opportunity for that same mistake to happen here.
Second Holy Nova? Okay, it's going to deal with a Jade Golem. It's going to leave Pavel with just a Zerdrake. That's okay for now. But the problem with that is that you then have no way of getting rid of the Zerdrake, and also Pavel has Mana Tide Totem in hand, and I don't think Thijs is going to be able to deal with that either, which means Pavel is going to be able to start getting, even without a Northshire Cleric, Pavel is going to be able to start getting through his deck pretty fast.
I would suspect with almost 100% certainty, unless we see a healing totem get rolled here, that this Jinyu will be healing up the Azure-Drake. Okay, now it's more difficult, because 14 health might as well be 730 health against Dragon Priest. Like, it's so much. But yeah, I think now, having seen the healing totem come out, he's totally fine with just letting that Drake chill.
Yeah, both Novas are gone. It's only Blackwing Corruptor that kills the Drake anyway, I think. But Thijs isn't happy about that Shadow Word Death pickup. He would be at a slightly different time, but not this specific time, because there's not actually anything with above 4 attack on the board. That's worked out really awkwardly for Thijs.
It has, and this is revealed deck lists again coming to fruition. Pavel has seen both Holy Novas. He knows that's all the AoE gone out of the deck now, so he is just 100% overloading the board as hard as he can, just putting an end to the game as quickly as possible. And yeah, this is pretty much exactly what we said, was Pavel would eventually just overtake the value game, having higher quality cards, higher quality minions overall. He just had to make sure that Thijs didn't get a huge resource advantage with that Northshire Cleric, which is why 8 damage ended up going into it.
Wow, Bran into Drake, into double Nether Spy Historian in a more value-oriented matchup. That would have been a really great turn, but now unfortunately, Pavel actually playing very, very aggressively just has lethal. These Nether Spy Historians wouldn't have done anything at all.
He also finished that game in perfect thinking emoji stance, which I'm sure Twitch chat was extremely fond of. But he will now go out to a 2-0 lead. And again, as I mentioned, I love to see world champions kind of backing up the hype, right? It's something that I do really enjoy about casting these kind of invitational tournaments. As much as I absolutely love and agree with the fact that this isn't 2014 anymore and we've moved to more open formats and you have to earn your right and qualify for everything, there is a certain pomp and circumstance and theatre that comes with these invitational tournaments where every game is big name up against big name. And
oh, right, for sure.
Just watching Pavel versus Thijs right now is hugely exciting for me, and Pavel is doing a great job of asserting his dominance so far.
Right, absolutely. To counter that slightly, I bet it feels even better if it was an open tournament and Thijs and Pavel both get through to the stage.
Oh, the brackets just come together and they just end up against each other, right?
Well, it does happen. Like, again, these are the best players. They do tend to get through these tournaments pretty often. But yeah, okay, so it's going to be Pavel's Arena Lock once again, this time versus Thijs' Aggro Shaman. This is the matchup we said might be a little bit awkward just because of the way Pavel's Arena Lock has been built. It's got the Mountain Giant, doesn't run Abyssal Enforcer, it doesn't look like it's been built to beat aggro. And also the Leroy combo, which obviously isn't that strong against aggro either.
Exactly.
This might be a game that Thijs can just win very, very quickly.
Yeah, I know Amnesiac recently was very, very vocal on the idea of combo in Reno Lock, as well as being very, very vocal on many, many things.
Yeah, I had something else in mind, but yeah, continue.
Yeah, one of the things he commented on quite strongly was that combo in Reno Lock was just wrong, because he says that you weaken pretty much every other matchup just to improve your mirror, and that doesn't make any sense. I don't know if that's necessarily true for every other matchup. I think combo is definitely useful against slower Jade decks, for example, to have a win condition. But combo does definitely weaken your aggro matchup significantly. If you are watching this and happen to be newer to the game, the word combo that we keep using, it refers to Leroy Jenkins' Faceless Manipulator Power Overwhelming, which is 3 cards that Reno Lock uses to deal 20 damage from hand.
Yeah, it does rely on the cards being discounted once by Emperor Thorisan, but otherwise, yeah, it's a consistent way of dealing with control decks. What I will say, though, about Pavel's disadvantage matchup here is he did manage to get a heal. He does have Kazarkas next turn. He does have a Silence, which could be relevant, maybe against this Flame Tongue Totem even. He's not out of the running just yet. If he can pick up Reno Jackson soon, or maybe a board clear or two, then he's in an okay spot.
Yeah, it's a nice Spellbreaker on curve. It's going to potentially run into Jade Lightning. But at least then you're kind of stopping your opponent from developing Drake in that case, which is fine. This is actually a good preemptive blocker for Azure Drake to come down just because of the shape of the 2 minions. So the Spellbreaker is actually a nice tech card inclusion here, and I assume with the Spellbreaker in there, this is in that kind of floating Blast Crystal Potion spot that some people sometimes play.
Right.
Yeah, I don't see a Blast Crystal in his list, so there's definitely more than usual. There are kind of floating tech card spots in a Reno deck. The combo spots, for example, as we were talking about, those are floating spots that you can play other cards in if you don't want to play the combo. Blast Crystal Potions, some Fury Protector, Acidic Ooze, even though it's mandatory right now because of weapon dominance, it is a tech card that can be cut out. So it's one of the things people really like about Reno decks, I think, is that you feel like you can put your own personality into the deck. There's so much freedom for you to play the cards that you like and that you think are the best.
Now, I apologize for my feminine gasp a moment ago while you were talking, but there is a Reno Jackson now in Pavel's hand. He's going to play Kazarkas now, go for a 1-mana spell, play it immediately, I assume. Yeah, that seems good. Summon a Spellbreaker, gain some armor. And then now, as soon as he wants to, he can play Reno Jackson and really, really slow Thijs down.
Yeah, the 1-mana AoE would have done a lot of work for him in that spot, so I can definitely see the risk reward being in his favor in terms of playing going for the 1-mana potion in that spot. But interesting, because having drawn the Reno, my mentality would tilt the other way and say, okay, this is no problem. I can afford to wait one more turn here, go for a 5-mana potion, and then I still have time, right? Because I have Reno in my hand. Sure. Reno is just a lot more time. But yeah, Pavel decides to try and react immediately. So his mentality is let's just not be pressured to play Reno too soon.
Right. I think it's that argument as well about not wanting to play Reno while your opponent has a board. Like if Thijs came out and played a Flame Wreath Faceless or even this Aya, and then you had to play Reno defensively whilst not clearing that much of their board, it might have felt a little bit awkward for Pavel. But this way he's not letting Thijs get too ahead on the board, and he still has Reno to fall back on. Ideally, deal 2 damage to all minions and gain 4 armor would have been, I guess, the best potion for Pavel.
Yeah, or deal 2 revive 1 would have been great as well.
Right.
Pavel now going to try and curve out with the Twilight Drake. It's only coming down as a 4/6 here in the dirty rat.
No!
Ouch! I mean, he's denied a 3/3 from his opponent. But, yeah, that is 6 mana's worth of tempo and a 5/3 on the board, essentially. And not quite, because a 5/3 isn't actually worth 6 mana on the turn that you play it. So
yeah, I think just its body is absolutely fine, you know. From Dirty. Thijs can't complain about that one too much. So Pavel trying to get the board back before he played Reno by putting the Twilight Drake up and by putting a big taunt minion up. But unfortunately, it looks like he's just helped Thijs to continue to dominate, and Pavel may have to Reno defensively whilst Thijs has the board.
Yeah, I think the theory here was to try and commit too many of Thijs's attacks into dealing with the 2/6 Dirty Rat.
Yeah,
and then that way his 4/6 would, go unblemished, and he can maybe even hold off Reno again by faceless shambling the 4/6 on the following turn. But yeah, Aya in play plus the double spell damage Maelstrom Portal has quickly made a mess of that plan.
Oh boy, Pavel doesn't really have any ideal solutions. Like Hellfire doesn't do enough. Shadow Flame wouldn't have done it. I guess Peddler Power Overwhelming Shadow Flame would have been okay, but it would have left Thijs with a Jade Golem. This really has turned around. It looked so good for Pavel up until recently.
Yeah, I mean, so he's back to full. There is, 10, 12, 15 damage. Okay, that's a lot of damage. Staring back in straight away. Yeah.
When you do the maths.
I was about to focus on the positives and say the board is full, so if Thijs wants to keep developing, he has to trade damage off, so then that's damage that's not going face.
Yeah.
And also that the 4/6 is actually just a very nice shape on the board right now, to the point where it might be annoying for Thijs to trade into. If Thijs does ignore it, then suddenly cards like Faceless Shambler become available. He has Power Overwhelming as well if he wants to try and make an enormous taunt at some point with the PO Shambler combo.
Yeah.
So there are lines here for Pavel that he can dig himself out of this with, for sure.
Yeah, okay, I can see that. And Thijs is trading, so at least some damage is going into this minion. I think, unfortunately for Pavel, the Fell Spirit obviously buffed the Tunnel Trog as well, which means although Thijs loses some damage on the trades here, he does actually gain some of it back.
Right. He essentially only sank 4 damage into that 6 health minion, the way it's worked out, because he was unable to overload the Tunnel Trog without making the board space, so it's pretty much free value at that point, when you get to kill a 4/6 essentially by only dealing 4 damage to it.
These cards just are not what Pavel needs right now. I think he needs a Soulfire. Nope.
Corruption is kind of like Soulfire, except you have to hang around for a bit until it goes off.
It's kind of like Soulfire, except you can take an extra 4 damage first.
Yeah. Instead of discarding a card, you discard your life total before it works. There you go.
Which, again, in certain matchups is probably much better, but not this one.
Yeah, Corruption, after for a long time being considered one of the very worst cards in the game, has actually been put in Reno decks on purpose. Not at rank 25, at rank 1 Legend.
Right.
Hello? What's happened? What's happened to our game?
I guess we're living in a world now where a lot of, especially the Reno decks, are kind of based around stalling. There aren't as many cards like Emperor Thorisan or Ysera around that gain value over time. So often you're safe to play Corruption, and maybe freeze a minion and then have it die next turn, because I think Frost Elemental, like Hoy is running Corruption and Frost Elemental in his Reno lock.
Right. Originally, Stan Sivka was the one who put Corruption in there, and that didn't have the freeze effect of the Frost Elemental in it. So that was literally just like corrupt your dude and it dies next turn with no real special tricks to it. So
sure.
Yeah, really interesting development. But in the meantime, while we were busy talking about the might that is Corruption, Thijs has quickly eliminated that Reno reset, and he's all the way back down to 4 health now with Pavel. So some Fury Protector can put up protection. There is still that Power Overwhelming Shambler combo available, but it's not looking great.
Pavel has another minor reset in the form of Lord Jiraxxus, but it's not enough to prevent Thijs from winning next turn. So that's not going to happen just yet. Mountain Giant is completely useless right now. I think... But then what can Pavel even gain by tapping? I was going to say I think he has to tap, but...
Very, very little. But does he have any play to survive on board? I don't think so, right? Because like PO Shambler Sun Fury doesn't even really achieve anything, because you make one big taunt, but then the other minion that you would taunt with the Sun Fury is just dying because you put PO on it. So
well, what if he plays Sun Fury, PO's the Sun Fury, plays Faceless Shambler, and copies the Sun Fury?
So he would have 4 health of taunt and then 7 health of taunt. He wouldn't trade into anything. No, he would still die. So
tapping into Hellfire. How frustrating is that? That would have been so helpful a couple of draws earlier.
It would. He just didn't have the life to play with it, really. It would have been at its most effective before the initial Reno if he'd have picked it up then, and then he could have instantly undone that damage with the Reno coming down. But yeah, goes to show, sometimes when you're playing an aggro deck, and an aggro deck that is as robust and refined as Aggro Shaman is, sometimes games are not just polarized around Reno Jackson. Sometimes you can just plow through, and that's exactly what happened there with Tyson. He needed that win. He's got himself on the board now. But now he's going in with Rogue against Shaman, which is a very difficult matchup when it comes up against the more aggressive version. Much more complex matchup, though. Much more nuanced matchup when it comes up against the more mid-rangey version that's playing Hexes, for example.
Oh, yeah, well, it's definitely not a matchup that's been around for that long. It's, again, one of those situations where Devolve does improve the matchup for the Shaman, but I'm pretty certain that Pavel is not running Devolve.
He is not.
No, he's not. Nor is he running Lightning Storm. Obviously agreeing with Life Coach's decision there to not run more board clears. Picking up all of his weapons. Meanwhile, Thijs gets Edwin but no coin.
Yeah. Less than ideal hands for both of these players early on, but so the big discrepancy here with this more hybrid version, which has the early pirate aggression but doesn't have lava bursts and lightning bolts so on to end the game quickly, is that they can't just play the game pirate warrior style against Rogue, where you just hit face every turn, wait for them to die, as Rogue is generally known to do against aggressive decks. You do have to go for board control, you do have to build up a board, and that means you're giving Rogue a little bit extra time, and suddenly cards like Hex can come into play to deal with some of their most threatening minions. Because Storm is out the window, as we just talked about, then suddenly Conceal is the golden ticket for Rogue in this matchup, because there's no real way for this particular Shaman deck to interact with it.
Yeah, I mean, another interesting decision that Pavel might have to make about his hexes is Tomb Pillager worth hexing? Because you sometimes get to the position, if the Rogue has a small enough hand, where by getting rid of the coin that Tomb Pillager can get, that actually reduces Gadgetzan Auctioneer's card draw by 1, which can be massively relevant. However, I think Hex has just found a new target that's not Tomb Pillager.
I think it may have done, yeah. The 6/6 is very threatening in this situation. It's come down early enough that it's going to completely dominate if it's left unchecked, and Edwin is just such a powerhouse of a card. Like, how long does it take Pavel to get to this point where he's dropping a 3-mana 6/6 on the board? He has to get there slowly but surely with his J cards, build it up one by one. Thijs just says, nah, son, 3-mana 6/6, let's go.
I've definitely seen earlier Edwards, which have been bigger, so Pavel doesn't have too much to complain about, and he does have the answer for it. The problem is, with Pavel playing the Hex here, is that it doesn't deal with the majority of Thijs' board. Yeah, he can bring Spirit Claws, which does kill patches, but Small-Time Buccaneer is always going to be there, and Thijs can just keep the aggression going, and play Tomb Pillager or a Zerdrake next turn.
You just go extremely Mr. Destructoid for me there. I don't know if that's something to do on your end. I can make out what you're saying. Yeah, it's a serious rip headphone user situation going on right now. But still, Maelstrom Portal coming down does answer the Hex eventually. Does clear out the Hex token eventually, and puts the Buccaneer down to 1 health while clearing out the patches. So he's starting to address this board piece by piece. Are you back with us in the line of human beings?
Apologies for that. Should be fine
no,
now.
you're not.
No.
No, that isn't any better. Okay. Maelstrom Portal number 2 picked up now, actually, which means he can deal with the remains of the Small-Time Buccaneer, but now can't address the Azure Drake. So it looks like he's just going to go for the board presence play with the Bran into J-Claws interaction that we were talking about earlier. Does allow him to start addressing the board. Still doesn't answer the Drake, but builds up a more powerful board presence of his own.
I hope it's better now.
That sounds good.
All right, okay, we're back in the game. Okay.
Yeah.
Apologies for that. Okay. So now, this time, Thijs does have the Gadgetzan Auctioneer in his hand, at least. That was why he lost, well, one of the reasons that he lost the last game. He went very all in. He didn't pick up the Gadgetzan Auctioneer and just ran out of stuff. All he had was 0 mana cards in his hand. But this game is looking very, very different. I think if Thijs can afford to play the Tomb Pillager soon, get the coin, then he can start rolling through his deck with Gadgetzan Auctioneer and have a good shot at getting to the finish line before Pavel's Jades get too big.
Yeah, and with that in mind, this is exactly that kind of tempo questing turn that I've been talking about, where it's low risk, high reward, because if there is no check for this questing, then suddenly it just snowballs and wins the game single-handedly. If there is, then it's at least a disruption turn. You might make your opponent do something that they don't want to, although that Stone Tusk Boar is enormous. That is one of the world's most important Stone Tusk Boars. But by making your opponent do something that they might not want to do, slow down and react to your board, then you buy yourself time to keep developing Tomb Pillager, etc., Gadgetzan Auctioneer, so on and so forth.
You know, I feel really sorry for Stone Tusk Boar here, because Patches has come out anyway and said, you know what, I'm just a better version of you, and I would have cleared this anyway, even if you didn't.
Hey, Patches does not activate Kill Command, alright?
Okay, you got me,
There you go. Because Hunter is a real class that people play. That's my argument.
Oh, poor Raven.
For many reasons.
Right. Okay, there's the Tomb Pillager. A second one's been picked up as well. And a second Gadgetzan Auctioneer. Thijs just needs to wait a little bit longer before he can start this ball rolling. The question is, like, is it going to be too late?
Ooh. That is a really strong draw, and suddenly the decision to go Brand Claws earlier on, even though it wasn't really that powerful on the board at the time, suddenly it's looking more promising, because this Jade Spirit and Jade Chieftain that he has in his hand are just exponentially more powerful than they were before.
Yes, that's true. Unfortunately for Pavel, there's nothing in his hand that actually kills Gadgetzan Auctioneer.
Ew.
And Thijs can play Auctioneer, Coin, Sap, or Shadow Strike, deal with the majority of the board, and potentially have the Auctioneer live.
Mm-hmm. He also does have Tomb Pillager number 2 in there, and he's also still got 24 life, so he might even be... His greedy little eyes light up right now and trying to get even more value out of these Auctioneers, but...
Yeah, he's definitely considering something, and playing Ancestral Spirit on Tomb Pillager is an option to get you an extra coin. Ooh. But then this turn, oh yeah, he could do it. He could do it.
I like it. That is a spicy meme. Plenty of coins. I like it. Let's do it. Nope, he's Shadow Striking instead. It would be a decent soft check for Hex number 2 at least, right? If he put the Ancestral Spirit on the Tomb Pillager, that's one of the reasons why I like it, but I think he's perfectly content. I think, you know, if this Tomb Pillager does even end up getting hexed, which is a possibility anyway, because of the fact that it's dominant on the board right now, then he doesn't even really need to invest the extra value of the Ancestral Spirit into it. So.
Yeah, I agree. It almost feels a little bit like a waste. If the hex were to come out. But now, yeah, okay. Now, come on. Thijs has to go now with this Auctioneer. It is time.
I would be inclined to agree with you.
Especially with the preparation pickup.
Yeah, a beautiful looking pinky purple card has just appeared in his hand that makes magic happen with Gadgetzan Auctioneer.
Okay. Conceal as well, that is a very nice card. Thijs playing the Ancestral Spirit, gonna trade in, get an extra coin, and then still have Tomb Pillager ready to be concealed.
Yep, the Avist pickup changes his plan on the fly, though. He can now Avist the 4/4, dagger into the 0/1, and make the Tomb Pillager trade into the 5/5 instead, which is an even better trade for it. So this turn just continues to improve for Thijs, as Gadgetzan Auctioneer turns seem to do.
Oh boy.
Another coin, another Swashbuckler. He has another Avist if he wants to go for the full board clear here. And then I'm sure this turn is ending more often than not in that conceal. He's going to go ahead and conceal first, knowing that he's going to do it anyway. This gives him maximum options moving forward now. And yeah, just going to hold on. That 2/3 is no threat to him whatsoever. Just leaves it hanging around. And yeah, Thijs looks pretty pleased with that turn. I think it's fair to say.
Seems fine. A Maelstrom Portal's already gone. That auction is never dying this turn. So now Thijs is going to have 10 mana next turn. He's got 3 spells in his hand, plus obviously a lot of extra draws, and Swashbuckler also has the ability to generate another spell. Tomb Pillager can get traded in for another spell. Thijs can do whatever he wants.
Can I tell you what he's most likely to do?
Just Leroy and win the game.
There you go. It's like, there's all these wonderful, pretty things that he could do. But he also has Leroy Coldblood in his hand.
Do you know what? That's actually almost a shame. We could be seeing a really exciting miracle turn. You know what? A big will he, won't he? But no, it's just Leroy Coldblood. lethal.
Wow, you mean Leroy Jenkins isn't exciting anymore? This isn't 2013. Wow.
2013, yeah, that's the year. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
the one.
Thijs squares up the series. 2 games to 2. The comeback train is on, and now, based on Pavel's actions in the previous series, he actually banned this matchup out. His lower mid-range Shaman against the aggro Shaman. In the series against Alois, he took that matchup away. He's forced to play it this time around, but there's obviously something about this matchup that he doesn't like, and Thijs now on the comeback trail, and we've also seen the more aggressive Shaman emerge victorious once today already, possibly even twice, I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, this time Pavel actually banned Thijs's Rogue versus his Mage, which is again a matchup a lot of people would consider to be favored to the Mage.
I mean, yes, this is still hotly debated, and the Rage versus Pheno show match did happen, where Rage had complete dominance as the Reno Mage, but Rage's list was extremely burn heavy and extremely freeze heavy.
I'm just saying, it's not like it's that one-sided, and this time Pavel decided to ban that matchup over this one, which in the previous series he wanted to ban. So he obviously doesn't feel confident with it at all. And we don't think, based on the last series, he feels confident with this one either.
No, I agree with you. Deckhand into weapon with the Flame Tongue Totem, now picking up the Buccaneer as well. So we're seeing the styles clash straight away. These Tunnel Trogs are the cards that this Life Coachy hybrid list chooses to omit. The Tunnel Trogs and the Totem Golems are not featured in the deck. So straight away, it's the Pirates coming up against the old guard of the Tunnel Trogs on the opening turns. And this is a play that I do like. Don't give your opponent the chance to react with their patches to your patches. Just load up the weapon first and go from there.
Yeah, Tunnel Trogs just too slow, isn't it?
Tunnel Trogs too slow. What a world we live in.
Okay, well, yeah, I mean, this is a really great opening hand for Pavel. The point of the Pirates is to help against aggressive matchups, and he's got just what he needs nice and early on. Unfortunately, though, Thijs has two, 3 Tunnel Trogs on the board already, which can be dealt with, but very soon there's going to be a 7/7 as well.
Yep, this is a complete board clear though, if Pavel wants it to be, which it appears he does. The patches and deckhand double trade, and Spirit Claws mopping up that 1/1 Jade token means that Pavel can start developing now, and this turn is a little bit of a whiff, now a pretty serious whiff for Thijs, having drawn the worst card in his deck that turn.
Yep, definitely safe to say that's the worst card in his deck to draw. Yeah, unfortunately, Thijs just isn't able to be that aggressive. He's got Flame Wreath Faceless next turn, but in the meantime, just Totem Path doesn't feel good. And Pavel is going to have another 2 chances to pick up Hex, or another method of dealing with the 7/7.
I do wonder whether this turn was played a little bit too hastily for Thijs. I wonder whether sending the 2 damage into the Flame Tongue and then either using patches or re-equipping the Spirit Claws might have been better. Because this way now, he has no way of stopping this situation where there's a Flame Tongue on the board with minions that now have initiative, and you don't want to drop your Flame Wreath Faceless into this board.
No.
Whereas the other way around, you've had a chance to set yourself up to remove the Flame Tongue Totem over 2 turns without really committing extra mana. And this way, I guess this way he gets to take out and take damage off the Small Time Buccaneer and deny it, but would have put himself in a slightly stronger position by setting up to take out the Flame Tongue, I think.
Now, what's interesting is Pavel could have actually, if he wanted to trade everything in, including his weapon, he could have dealt with the 7/7 that turn. Obviously decided against it. That would have also meant sacrificing one of the 2 Flame Tongues as well.
Oh, I see. Right, yeah, with the additional Flame Tongue, right.
Yeah, it would have been a painful play to make. This seems absolutely fine. Thijs does only have 3 mana to play with this turn, so it's going to be tricky for him to deal with Pavel's board and also push damage to the face, which is kind of what he needs to do.
Yep, so Patches is going to come out now and it'll get at least a little bit of value here, which is a reason why Patches is a little more beneficial in Shaman than it is in, say, Pirate Warrior a lot of the time. Pirate Warrior drawing Patches is just absolute death most of the time, whereas Shaman and Rogue to a lesser extent can at least get small pieces of value out of it sometimes. Thijs really considering whether he wants to go face or trade here, or whether he wants to trade the Manatite Totem, the Flame Tongue Totem, or go face. I guess all three are valid options.
Yeah, it's such a complicated. Any series of trades, you're absolutely right, seems good here. Like preventing card draw, preventing the extra damage by killing the Flame Tongue, getting rid of the spell damage, or just putting 12 damage into the face. It's very, very tricky. Oh, sorry, the Flame face has already gone face. Putting an extra 3 damage into the face, though. Okay. Yeah, getting rid of the Flame Tongue makes a lot of sense. It prevents Pavel from just suddenly winning the game.
The Hex thing from below turn, this turn though, is pretty close to what you just described. That is a massive swing turn.
Pavel just winning the game immediately.
Yeah, it's a huge swing on the board, right? Bye-bye 7-7, hello 5-5 taunt in one fell swoop. That's pretty amazing.
I think from below is very, very good. Providing you've met the criteria, it's always a very, very good tempo play. As long as you've hit that hero power button a couple times, or even just played Totem Golem or Flame Tongue Totem. It's a pretty strong card from Whispers of the Old Gods there.
Pavel might just be considering whether he has a little bit more time here, just potentially considering the greedy line. Of course, he can get that 5-5 even cheaper if he was just to go with a totem this turn, be it either Flame Tongue or the hero power, and then load up the Spirit Claws as well. That would essentially represent more tempo over the course of 2 turns. But I think the extra protection right now is worthwhile, so your opponent can't just perhaps connect another Spirit Claws, full value 3 damage charge to your face, and potentially burst you down even through that Jinyu Water Speaker healing that you have available.
Yeah, well, now Thijs is just running out of ways to win quickly. He's going to just put all that he can in, clearing this board, putting that Spirit Claws going face. I think it has to.
It did, yeah. I think committed at this point. Yep, there it goes.
You're right, Bran. Jinyu just is going to pretty much shut Thijs down.
Yeah, it's definitely not perfect. It's very, very close to at this point. But it's one of those plays where you ask yourself the question, if I do this, how do I ever lose? And it's hard to imagine a world where this play does lose, especially when you still have that value engine of the Manatite Totem running. So
yeah. Okay, well, Thijs is going to... No, he's shaking his head. I thought he was going to keep going for a second there, but...
Well, he still might. He might invent some crazy world he lives in, address the board this turn, draw exactly Aya next turn. Your Jade Golems are then pretty huge. Your opponent's hand contains nothing but a collection of Pokemon cards.
Pokemon cards?
Yeah. Yeah, any Hearthstone cards would win the game from this. You literally have to have a handful of illegal cards that you are not allowed to play.
Right. Oh boy. Bran into Jade Claws is disgusting. That's... You're right. There are no cards in Pavel's deck that probably don't cause Thijs to concede at the end of this following turn.
Well, he didn't concede at the end of the previous turn, which suggests that Thijs is going to be in it for the long haul here, but we'll see if this is considered enough, because there is pretty much now lethal being face down on board. 7, 9, 10, 11, 12, 14 damage showing.
Okay.
Yeah. Thijs is going to give it up. He dragged it out that one extra turn. But this time it is the slower Shaman that was able to get through the very fast start from Thijs with the double Tunnel Trog into J-Claws opening. Yeah. And it was actually important sequencing, and it's